this is the exciting panel about cybersecurity, all right? And I guess you all understand what cybersecurity means. Cyber is something in cyber, in the air, the cloud. And before we start, I just want to, cybersecurity sounds like something very big, international, global thing. Make sure the door is not closed. But then we can start by making it very down to earth for you guys. I guess you all have Facebook, at least most of you. How many of you have been hacked on Facebook that you know about? One? Christina? Only one? Oh, come on. Either you are very bad Facebookers or you don't know what's going on. How many of you have, Christina, do you have two-factor authentication? Now or before the hack? Before the hack, you see got hacked. Or they tried to, or they managed. They managed, okay. The reason I say this is that we all have been hacked, tried to be hacked. I have been tried to be hacked. But because of that, I succeeded not being hacked. But then friends have been. And I have been receiving phone calls from people who say that this friend of ours on Facebook, he's sending me some strange request right now. He wants information from me that I don't want to give him. Do you know what's going on, Tom? And then I can say, well, he's been hacked. Just delete his profile. There was a friend of mine, same age as me. I received a friend invitation a few weeks, last week actually, without a photo. And she only had a few friends. And I knew that this is a hack. So I sent her an SMS. And I said, you have been hacked on Facebook. Please fix it. And by the way, do you have two-factor authentication? And she was shocked. She didn't know anything about that. But she managed to stop it with Facebook. So this is also cyber attacks on the private individual level. We might think it's not so dangerous. But who of you believe that Donald Trump would have become president of the United States in 2016 or 2017 without the influence hackers had on Facebook? We can leave that open because there's no right and wrong in this, perhaps, but it's a very good question. On this backdrop, we are going to move into the maritime industry and shipping. And as we just heard now from Kristin, shipping is becoming more digital. Shipping used to be a very analog industry. Ships were disconnected. So when people were on ships, they could relax from the outside world. I'm sure many people like that. I do that when I fly. I hate Wi-Fi on planes. I fly quite a lot. And to me, flying has been the last sort of break in life. And when they suddenly introduced Wi-Fi on planes, I was, what the fuck is going on? Nobody asked me about that. So I never use it on principle. I always try to do something else on planes than to be online, because we can be online everywhere else. By the way, can a plane be hacked because it's Wi-Fi connected? I don't know. Perhaps, we don't know. But this is about maritime. And actually, hacking is a big problem in the maritime industry as ships become more connected and more online and digitalized. And what you can imagine is that a ship can be attacked, it can be brought on shore, it can be brought to crash. And I had the pleasure of being a part of a cybersecurity workshop in Vilnius organized by a project here in Klaipėda. I was a non-expert together with experts. So we were some non-experts, and then they were experts. And we worked together to create ideas for attacks, and then to create ideas for counterattacks. And one idea we had, which was quite fun for somebody who has been in Lithuania and Klaipėda so much, was to block the entrance to the port of Klaipėda. And this was before the invasion took place. This was back in before that, long time before that. And the interesting thing is that the idea we had has been done before in the 1600s. This actually happened here in Klaipėda. So what we talked about was to have a vessel being distorted, being hacked. We had a very fun plan of using drones, underwater drones, taking out the ship, turning it around, and sinking it in the front of the entrance to the port, and then blocking it from any transport of energy out and in. You know, Minagas, you can just imagine what that would mean to you when you need supplies of LNG to Independence and nobody would be able to get in. I don't know if you can do that, but the experts said you can, and they had a very good idea of how to do that. And then we had the counter-attack afterwards to see, okay, so how can we counter that? Now, as you know, I'm not an expert, so I'm very happy to introduce to you experts here today. So we always go with ladies first, as often as we have ladies. And so Sigutė, Stankevičiūtė, sorry, even a PhD with this, a lawyer, can come on stage. Thank you, sit down. And you are actually from the Military Academy of Lithuania, so you have turned a military as a researcher. That's you. And then we have Albertas from the Lithuanian Armed Forces, actually. Should we be afraid now, or you are not armed now?
I will explain later.
Yeah, are you armed now, or non-armed? Not armed? Good, then you can sit down. And then we have online, I see you here. Can you see him? Yes, no, you can't. You only see me. Here you are.
Hello.
Hello. Roy Sur, you are from the ThriveDx SaaS. SaaS, I know, means software as a service, right? That's what
Yes,
you do.
correct. We are the software as a service division of Thrive, which is a cybersecurity education company.
Great. So now we have the military, and we have you as a civilian, right? Not armed.
Well, I also served for 10 years in the Israeli cyber forces. But I'm
So
not
you
armed.
know-
Maybe just with code.
So you know things we are not supposed to know, I guess.
Well, I can't tell, I guess.
I guess. But we are now talking in a few minutes. We're going to talk, or for a few minutes, we're going to talk about cyber attacks and security on the maritime industry. And why don't you start, with your perspectives on this and what you work with? Sigurd.
I'm trying to switch it on.
Well, I think it's supposed to be on. Guys, microphone?
No, I think it's working.
Yeah, it's working. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Well, the topic is cybersecurity, yes, right? But my research area and the area where I work actually is information security. And this, the other subtopic of cybersecurity, you can call it, or you can call it a separate topic, but information in general is a very powerful tool. And it is a foundation how people interact with each other. And what does it mean? It means that information is a basis of how we make sense of, interact with environment, with each other, and finally how we understand the reality. Perception is reality, what my colleagues at military says. And there are a lot of buzzwords that describes information effect phenomena on people mindset, like information operations, information warfare, disinformation, propaganda, misinformation, fake news, you name it. And it's not new phenomena in general. It has been on Earth for ages. But what is new is how technology affects it, and the speed that we share information, download, upload, send, receive, is one thing. But the other thing is that the technology also can formulate our mindset without us even knowing about it. So it's really tricky to understand not only for, usually it is a perception that only people who are not well educated are affected by information warfare, but reality is that it's not true. Every one of us can be affected and usually are affected without even knowing. So what about the Marine? And in general, information warfare, I was reading yesterday that only 2 months ago, for example, United States Marine Corps adopted Doctrine on information warfare. And what is very interesting that now they are entitled to incorporate information warfare operations in every single operation that we plan. Well, before it was just a tail, like at the end of all the operation if it's necessary. Now it's required, and required for Marines, not for Lithuanian, for example, military strategic communication department or any other strategic communication department. It's required for special forces of the military. So it shows the power of information and not only cybersecurity.
Sigurd, I have a rhetoric question for you.
Sure.
If Lithuania is a small population, compact, if you and it's also very homogeneous. It's mostly Lithuanians. If you were to forcefully change people's mindset to accept a fact that is not a fact, for example, could you do that? Do you know how to do that?
Well, first of all, we're a democratic country, so we can't use information operations on our own citizens and in the time of peace. It is only allowed during wartime and in war zones. So no.
You can actually do that in wartime.
In wartime.
You can do that. So there are ways to change people's mindset without them knowing it.
Yes, it's
using technology that you can have.
It's possible.
It's possible. Okay, very good. Albertas, you have a very cool title. You are team lead of cyber operations. Now, cyber operations, is that attack or counterattacks, or what do you actually do? Can you say something about your job?
Yes, so first of all, I think we owe some explanation for the audience, because we are kind of all with some military background sitting here in front of you. But the thing is that at least in Lithuania, which is a very small state, cybersecurity is the responsibility of Ministry of National Defense. And there are many governmental organizations that belong to this circle of security for the National Cybersecurity Center. But of course, some other institutions also have to apply some laws and orders, all legal basis that there is in place. But so back to your question, which was, can you please repeat in other words?
It says that you're lead of cyber operations.
Yeah,
then
correct.
We are very curious. What kind of operations is that actually?
Yeah, so first of all, we follow the NATO alliance rules, and the NATO alliance is a defensive organization. So first of all, we are military responsible for defensive operations. We don't do any offensive or bad things, let's say like this.
Only good things.
Only good things, yes.
Good to know.
Yeah, and some, of course, some intelligence in cyberspace going on, whether it is official sources or some human intelligence can be used for those purposes, but only defensive and good things.
So you're the good guy. I have a question. We have heard a lot about independence today, and it's a remarkable thing, independence. But if energy security has become the new buzzword after 24th of February, in a very negative way, I have to say, have you had any attacks or planned attacks that you know about to cut off something from independence and to make independence not work?
So from our organization, which is defense staff of armed forces, so we do not know that information, or perhaps we are not responsible for the cybersecurity of this specific unit. That question could be addressed more to Regional Cyber Defense Center, which is located in Kaunas actually. But yes, so to speak, we don't have such information. But I believe that independence is highly secured, valuable unit, so to speak.
Yes, I would think so. Roy, we come to you. Where are you now? It looks so sunny.
Right now I'm in Tel Aviv, so it's
in Tel Aviv.
Nice and sunny day outside in Israel. Yes.
So, what is your take on all this that we talk about now?
Yeah, I think, look, from a cybersecurity perspective, I think in general, when I'm using the term cybersecurity, I'm also including information security and data privacy. It's just how we frame the concept of cybersecurity, which is a terminology issue. But think about cybersecurity. We know we are dealing with millions of attacks per day, globally, and trillions of dollars in accumulated damage. And we think of kind of like the damage of cybersecurity in 2021, for example, is estimated at 600-700 billion US dollars. When we think about the next 5 years, research by Accenture, by others, is talking about accumulated damage of trillions of dollars. So it's a very, very big deal. And it's not just the financial side, it's also of course, there's human lives, infrastructure, national security, and other aspects. And I think my take in general is, while all of this sounds like a technological issue, and there are technological aspects to cybersecurity, it's much more a human issue and a business challenge and a general security challenge, and just the the responsibility of the IT and information security managers. And I think these kind of events are really important because this is a topic that needs to be in top priority of many decision makers in many realms or fields of expertise, including maritime. And maritime has this unique position between OT, operational technology, and IT, information technology, because you have in ships, in vessels, in ports, you have this combination of kinetic or physical infrastructure that needs to be protected next to technological infrastructure that need to be protected. So it's a very complex challenge. And I think this is important to address this in this conference and in general in public discussion.
But cybersecurity has at least two dimensions. One is the business side, and then the other is the more operational technical side. When I say business side, I'm thinking about ransom, hijacking of data. And I don't know how many of you know that, but Maersk in Denmark, the biggest shipping company, one of the biggest ones in the world, they had a very big attack. I guess you know about that, Roy, the attack on Maersk. And do you know the ransom money they wanted and how they wanted it? Do you know the story about Maersk?
Nope. No, I don't know the full story. I'm aware of that, but nope, unfortunately.
Yeah. But anyway, this is the first big one like that in the world. And this, what I've heard is that they managed to get out of that in the end. It took many, many months. It cost them millions and millions and millions of pounds and dollars and whatever you would say. And then what I heard on this conference I was attending on Monday that I told you about was the Maersk case. First of all, they have been traveling around and telling people, telling companies, sharing their experience about that. So that's very good, how they share experience. But they also said that what they had not planned for was when everything was down and locked for so long, what do you start up again? What systems do you start first? How do you rebuild the whole thing from scratch? And that was something that's a big concern. But that's the operational side of something where you actually can hijack the data. I mean, the business side, you can hijack the data, but you don't hijack the vessels. So the other side is to actually be afraid of vessels in the maritime industry. And now we haven't even talked about autonomy. I guess you all know autonomy, where vessels could become self-operating, even without any crew on board. That's the full autonomous solutions that there will be some of. So back to you. Yes, Albertas. What do you think about that issue?
Yeah, it sounds future, but also terrifies me, at least personally. You can imagine 100,000 tons just going without any control. That's, of course, a disaster, big disaster. But I think things can be placed in place to control. And as Roy mentioned, the operational technologies, and this is really has to be very controlled environment, separated from any internet connection at all. It has to be very, very specifically controlled. Additionally, I would say if we talk about such a thing, IT department, IT specialist or cybersecurity specialist has to be very aware of the whole organization, and even I would talk about the remote control of such vessel. For example, it has to be a lot of alternatives in place. And I would like to use and to say this thing that some countries that are waging wars and they are doing collateral damage. There was a collateral damage exactly on the 24th of February when some KS-SATCOM systems were struck by some bad countries, and loss of communication, loss of data transfer was executed in seconds. So additionally, these countries can do also GPS jamming. It's an additional collateral damage. Whether it will be used against militaries, but the area cannot be controlled. So I already mentioned two those things. And when we are clear that we can handle those things, then I would talk about autonomy actually.
Yeah, so you're not a fan of autonomous vessels?
Not
right
at
now.
all.
Not at all. Sigutė, back to you, because you are more on the human side of this, not the technological side, basically. And you guys, you have to help me now, but is it true that the human factor is always the dangerous thing? I mean, you find the weakest part of a chain, and that weakest part of the chain could very often be a person, a human being. And then we're back to you and what you are working on, because it has to do with people, people's minds, right?
Yes, with people's minds, and usually what it affects the most is the fear. And we're talking about autonomous vehicles. People are afraid of what they don't know. And this is how the disinformation, misinformation, and even fake news starts to spread. So the best way to help people to understand is, of course, educate them. And I heard today a lot about how important is people support, and we have a panel that was before it was talking, I think Rytis was talking about it. So you can get people support also by helping them to understand their fears and showing the potential that the future might bring.
Yeah, because the future is a bit dangerous. But if you, it sounds a bit dangerous, but if you go to the human aspect of things again, if you want to do an attack on a company or a maritime company or even a vessel, would you find people's links? I mean, to attack through people and individuals, through emails and to all that spam we get, and some people open it and so on. How dangerous is that? Guys, yes, Albertas?
Yeah, I think you are talking about so-called social engineering and all those phishing campaigns, phishing attacks, whaling attacks against CEOs, and of course, if it goes down to each user, then of course it will, at some point, it will reach its, let's say, destination. And the worst case, from cybersecurity perspective, it's an intrusion or intruder threat. But then I totally agree with you that education, which has to be included into the risk management of the company or whatever enterprise, as part of the how to handle cyber threats, risk management and education is a part of the plan. So maybe, yeah.
Roy, any comments?
Yeah, one of the key, I would say, lessons from IBM's research a few years ago is that about 95% of all security incidents involve human error or the human factor. And one of the things that my company is doing is actually operating phishing attacks, of course, for learning purposes. We actually deploy phishing attack systems in large enterprise, from big banks, government agencies, even NATO. And these attack actually millions of employees globally, about 15 to 20 million attacks on an annual basis, all of course approved by the companies and organizations for learning purposes. And we see that a significant amount of people are still falling victim to phishing attacks, to vishing attacks, which is video phishing, spear phishing, or whaling. There's more design phishing, or whaling usually defined as something that identifies executives or senior people. And we see that companies that not doing these drills and at least 4 or 5 phishing attacks on an annual basis and internal training are much more sensitive to cyber attacks. And the human factor is really the biggest vulnerability in every organization, and that's not that's including, of course, the maritime and vessels and shipping organizations and ports, because as the systems become more and more sophisticated, and you can patch the systems with more sophisticated technology, unfortunately, we can't yet patch the human brain. This is not something that you can download a patch and solve the problem. This has to be a continuous effort over time.
When we talk about cyber attacks, it can also be something like happened to Hög. Minagos is here now. And I can tell you, Minagos, I don't know if you know this, but several years ago, actually, the head of ship owning in Hög, Olav Solli, you know Olav? He experienced that they were building new ships, and they had a payment plan, how to pay installments on those ships. And he was in charge of that. Now, I know Olav as a red pen person, so he's a very particular person, so they didn't know who they were trying to fool here. But what happened was, he received an email. There seemed to be an email from the shipyard. Everything was authentic. And it said, please, Mr. Solli, for the next installment, use another bank account than the one we have agreed. Use this bank account instead. Here are the data. Now, Olav, being the particular guy I mentioned, the red pen guy, he felt very uncomfortable about that. So what he did was to pick up the phone and make a phone call to the shipyard, to the people he knew and had spoken with before, who could say that, no, 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 this is not from us, this is... And this is many years ago. So what I'm trying to say is that we are so used today to emails and to electronic communication that we sometimes forget to take the phone. Is that an issue as well, that we are too used to just doing everything online now? Roy.
This is, as the world becomes, of course, more and more digital, it's not just the IT, it's everything around us. It's IT, it's OT, it's IoT. So right now, when we think about access points of hackers, it's not just your email, right? We mentioned emails, but it's your email and your phone and your smartwatch. And that can be your smart house and smart lamps. And again, think about if you go back to ships and vessels, and you have so many technologies there that some of them are now interconnected. And so, yeah, of course, this is something that as the world become more and more digital and also more dependent on data and data security and data privacy and data safety, then the effect of cybersecurity and the importance of cybersecurity, this just becomes a critical aspect of our lives and not just something that is relevant for tech companies or IT organizations.
Albertas, you mentioned a big vessel running on its own as a dangerous thing. And what if that vessel is filled with something very hazardous, toxic? Or
You mean dangerous goods?
Yes.
So there are many systems in place that control from IMO, of course, but you mean from cybersecurity perspective, something exactly you are about? Or
No, I'm just thinking about
consequences, or no?
If a hacker wants to do real damage to a country, because you talked about bad countries, and we all know who those countries are. We don't need to mention them, but some of them are quite close, and some of them are further away, right?
I think the point is here that you mentioned Maersk case. The worst case is how attractive you are to cybercrime, to cyber criminals. It depends, and then they will decide how much effort they will use, how much their internal money they will use, because such campaign will take time. To attack this vessel will take, let's say, 6 to 5 to maybe 1 year to plan and then execute. They know how to do it: reconnaissance, weaponization, delivery, and stuff like that. This is already the chain, but the idea, the value of the target, let's say like this, then they will decide whether they will do that or not. In this case, if we are talking about those countries that are not good, of course they will use all their state resources, and they are, let's say, very huge resources. Then of course they will do it, and I cannot guarantee that we will be able even to protect it, because I want you to understand that the power of balance in cyber domain is opposite in our kinetic world. It means that a small one can overweigh the big one, because when you are very small, it is easier to find those backdoors and holes and stuff like that. So that's my idea.
Sigutė, tell more about what you are working with right now.
Actually, we're developing now NAS platform, and the purpose of that platform is to fight with disinformation and all the related online threats, and it has 3 modules. And one module, of course, is for identification of new information phenomena which we don't know, and they are targeting Lithuania. And the other module is actually for innovation uptake. I think that the Vice Minister spoke about the sandbox.
Yeah.
So we are also developing a sandbox where we can test the technologies that will help us to fight with online threats and information operations directed towards Lithuania. And the last module is about education. And we believe that a combination of all these three modules will help not only Lithuania, but also Baltic states and NATO probably to become stronger in fight against the threats that we pose every single day. And I just would like also to add that hacking can also be with a purpose to spread false information. And we have a lot of false examples where institution websites were hacked and the false information were basically put there just to mislead people and to make them feel unsafe and unsure about their own government.
Yeah, there's a special word for that. I don't remember that, but I learned that on Monday, that there's a word for that. It's not so dangerous, but it can be very annoying. Just so you know what Maersk experienced, Maersk, the big Danish shipping company, all the data was down, the computers were down, and they had attacked the whole system, and they demanded ransom, a huge amount of money, to restore that and to give the data back. So what they do, they hijack the data, they close down the data systems of the company, and they say that to get everything back, you need to pay so and so much in Bitcoin to some certain account or whatever. But that was Maersk. What I'm thinking is, you talked about education, because we talked about today when people use their work email addresses for private purposes as well, and how easily you can get a lot of things into a work server that you shouldn't have. And you were shocked when I told you that. I have many people who do that. Is that something you don't do in Lithuania, Sigutė?
Well, I thought that it is something what people don't do this anymore anywhere.
Okay. A little survey. How many of you use your work email address in private matters? Nobody? Oh, come on. Tatjana and the Norwegians, of course, all Norwegians. You know, we Norwegians, we are so good believing. We believe everything, everybody is so good. So do you have any rules about this in Lithuania, or do you have that in the military or something? Yeah?
I saw some very good rules in Danish armed forces, actually. Because for outside world, they are using email names garbled, some letters, numbers, and something like that. But within internal organization, it's normal name, surname, and easy. But so far, you are going outside, your email becomes garbled. But there is some point. Tom, I wanted to ask you one thing. I think we scared the audience quite much. Maybe it's time to say some good words how to handle this cybersecurity.
Let's do that.
So maybe Roy also will join us. And so from my perspective, first of all, I would like to say that in cybersecurity there is always zero probability of a chance that something happened. We don't want that. So that's why we are a little bit apocalyptically looking at this point. But of course, I would say, at least for Lithuanian companies, do a proper risk management and check residual risks that will come, and always know that they are. Also, with respect to Klaipėda area, I can also speak freely that in Lithuania we have a problem with cybersecurity specialists. And when I say Klaipėda, the problem is that all those good guys and ladies, they live in Vilnius. And they don't want to come to Klaipėda. And imagine if you would like to have a crew member, very sophisticated, very skilled cybersecurity specialist, to be a sea rider and go for a month, trip. So it will never happen. So I don't have a current solution right now. So let's think all together. But as I said, proper risk management and know where you are. What is your inventory? That is my proposal.
And Sigutė, you talk about education, to educate people.
Yes, so actually my colleagues from Strategic Communication Department of Lithuanian military, they always say how to understand if information is real, not real, how can we trust or don't trust. So they always give the advice that you have to check information as much as you check the facts about the phone that you are willing to buy.
Yeah.
So don't trust the first news that you get. You need to check, verify, and then to believe.
Roy, do you have some advice in the end here to people?
Yeah, if I'll just add to that, I'd say that we need to assume we are hacked or assume we will be hacked. And I think once we have this assumption, then we understand that other than protection, of course, and avoidance from things, we also need to know what happens when it happens, meaning that we need to be prepared to know, to have these contingency plans, both as companies and as individuals, because it's not just about protection and prevention. It's also about detection, remediation, recovery. When we think about cyber attacks, we also need to be resilient that once it happens, we need to know what to do. And that's also true for the physical space. You know, bad things, will happen. Will happen. Of course, we need to take action to prevent them. So part of educating ourselves is also educating ourselves beyond the awareness of how to protect ourselves, but also how to react once it happens. And there are different ways of having backup and recovery plans and understanding what to do in different situations. And for companies and organizations have what we call role-based training. Different people in the organization need different levels of training. Developers on secure code, IT on IT security, general employees on awareness and phishing, executives on whaling. Once we look at this 360 approach, we can be much more prepared for when it happens.
Thank you. Thank you, Roy. Well, I hope this was useful, and I hope it didn't scare you too much. But it's a scary thing, but there are many good sides about this as well. And I think being prepared, knowing the language, knowing what to read and look for is a very important thing. So, Albertas, Sigutė, and Roy, thank you so much for the panel.